The crash landing. Outpost Cordon 6 was the kind of place even dying stars forgot. Nestled at the edge of the taxi's rift, it was a metal skeleton of scaffolds, smoke vents, and half-lit corridors barely clinging to life. Here, old freighters came to die, and scrap engineers came to hide. Lan Harrow was both. For 10 quiet years, Lan had lived on Cordon 6. He fixed things, that was it. A cracked thruster coil. Fixed. A warp drive joint. Fixed. A reactor leak on the brink of going nova. Still fixed. It didn't matter how broken something was, Lan could bring it back. Not because he loved machines, but because machines, unlike people, didn't lie. You gave them what they needed, and they worked. The sky over Cordon hadn't seen drama in a decade. So when it turned crimson and tore itself open, Lan looked up from under the hood of a dying cargo hauler and whispered, "That's not weather." A tear in the atmosphere ripped open above the western crater ridge. Something massive crashed through it, spiraling like a comet with wings. Fire bloomed behind it. Sonic booms rolled across the outpost like war drums. Half the station's power grid flickered as the magnetic surge fried its circuits. Lan stood, dust coating his weathered face. The crash sent tremors through the floor, but he didn't flinch. The thing plummeted into the mining flats, far enough not to hit the core generators, close enough for the shock wave to shatter every piece of glass in the upper ring. Station lights failed. Klaxons wailed, then silence. No one moved. But Lan did. He grabbed his tools, his reinforced breather mask, and a plasma torch. He didn't ask for backup. He didn't radio command. He just went, because in his gut, Lan knew something had fallen that wasn't a ship, or a meteor, or anything that should exist. As he reached the crater's edge, smoke billowed like blood, and heat shimmered in waves. The impact site looked like a war zone. Jagged black rock steamed beneath molten dirt. Pools of glowing slag ringed a gaping scar in the landscape. And at its center, half buried in ash, was something enormous. Scaled. Breathing. A claw the size of a gunship twitched once. Lan's brain screamed at him to run. His legs didn't listen. The creature unfurled like a dying storm. Massive wings, torn and scorched, dragged behind it. Its tail coiled and cracked the earth like a whip. The creature rose to its feet slowly, groaning against gravity as if the planet was trying to keep it down. It was a dragon, not the kind children read about. This one had armor for skin, ridges like ship plating, eyes that glowed with a furnace's rage, and a body built to eat war. Every breath it took sucked heat from the air. It bled gold. Lan stood there, motionless. The dragon turned its head toward him, and their eyes locked. What Lan saw wasn't just a beast. It was fury and fear, pain and hunger, something old and cruel and beautiful that had no name left to call itself. But it did not attack. Instead, it stared, as if stunned at the tiny thing in front of it. This soot-covered man with a toolbox and a tired spine hadn't turned to run. Lan took a single step forward. The dragon's jaw twitched. He spoke softly, "You're not here to kill." The dragon inhaled slowly. Steam hissed from its throat. Lan knelt, hands open. "Whatever they did to you, I've seen worse. If you want to die, I'll walk away. But if you want to live, I can fix broken things." The dragon blinked. The sky held its breath. And then it collapsed. Not from weakness, from choice. Lan stood, shoulders tense. He stepped toward the still form, the size of a carrier, the weight of an army, and whispered, "All right then. Let's see what they did to you." First contact. It took hours for the smoke to clear. Lan worked in near blindness, the orange glow of his torch the only thing cutting through the haze. The dragon, if that word still fit, lay curled around itself, ribs rising like towers, wings folded against the ground like funeral shrouds. Its chest heaved with ragged breath, and with every exhale, Lan could hear the gurgle of fluid. It was bleeding inside. He circled carefully, fingers ghosting over its metallic hide. Parts of it were armor, true armor, bonded to scale and sinew in ways no natural biology should allow. Someone had engineered it. Not birthed it. Built it. Every seam was a scar. Pulse wires ran along its spine, frayed and overloaded. The neural plates beneath its crown were cracked, as if something had tried to dig into its brain. Lan saw shunt ports, 7 of them, some still sparking faintly, others melted shut. This creature had been caged, wired, used, and then finally discarded. The dragon stirred as he moved closer to its neck. "Easy," Lan said, holding out a hand. Its eye opened, just one. The other was swollen shut by a blast burn that stretched from cheek to jaw. "You understand me?" Lan asked. No answer. Just that steady, watching eye. Ancient and calculating. "I think they tried to rip your mind out," Lan muttered. "But they left something behind, didn't they?" The dragon exhaled hard. Dust swirled. Lan dropped his pack, activated his microstation toolkit, and ran a scan. He'd done this on hundreds of machines, extractors, drop pods, weapon drones. This was the first time he'd done it on something that looked back. The internal diagnostics were a nightmare. Biocircuits fried, cranial linkages overdriven, respiratory cores fractured. Heart rate irregular but stabilizing. Whatever had brought this thing down, it had survived long enough to fall here. But something didn't add up. There were no command chips, no kill switch, no leash. Whoever had built this monster had trusted it, or feared it too much to cage it properly. "You're not a weapon," Lan whispered. "You're a survivor." He reached for a cauterization spray, moved toward a bleeding segment of the dragon's underbelly, and paused. "I'm going to seal this wound. It's going to hurt." The dragon didn't move. Lan sprayed. It roared. Not a battle cry, not rage, pain. The outpost trembled beneath the sound. Then silence again. The dragon sagged, head low. Lan stood, chest heaving. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's what fixing feels like." The dragon closed its eyes. Lan sat beside it, exhausted, torchlight flickering. He looked up at the stars, the breach in the sky still bleeding slow light from wherever this thing had come from. "You feared nothing, didn't you?" he asked. "But whoever dropped you, they knew fear." He reached into his pack and took out a weld cloth, laid it over the scorched joint of its front leg. "Get some rest. I'll keep working. You've earned that much." And without another word, the human mechanic went back to mending the deadliest dragon the galaxy had ever created. The dragon didn't speak, but it didn't sleep alone that night. The bond forms. 3 days passed. The dragon did not speak. Lan worked tirelessly, from the breaking of blue haze dawn to the last shiver of dusk light over Cordon's toxic hills. He built shade over the crater with salvaged hull plating from an abandoned orbital rig. He installed a coolant mist system that vented recycled vapors across the dragon's overheated flanks. He stripped parts from 7 different grounded cruisers to repair the dragon's left actuator, the part of it that looked like bone but under Lan's hands clicked like machinery. He didn't know where the line between beast and machine began anymore. But he understood systems. And something in this dragon's core, a mix of biology and engineering, had been calibrated to respond to rhythm, attention, and care. The first time the dragon moved voluntarily, Lan was balancing on a support beam above its shoulder, soldering in an energy flow limiter. It flinched, not violently, but sharply enough that he nearly lost his footing. He dropped, landed hard in the dirt, rolled. All right, he coughed. "You do feel that." "Noted." The dragon lifted its head slightly, eye narrowing. Lan sat up, brushing grime from his neck. "If you want me to stop, growl. If you want me to keep going, don't eat me." The dragon huffed. It was a sound like a furnace blowing out breath after years of being stoked. Lan grinned. We're making progress. He returned to the beam, and for the next hour, the dragon held unnaturally still. By the fifth night, Lan had run out of fuel cells, synthetic tissue gel, and patience with his own aching back. But the dragon was breathing easier. The inner plasma chamber beneath its rib plating, what Lan had begun to call the forge heart, was no longer cycling erratically. The pulses were even, steady. The internal fires were recovering. Lan sat beside its massive front paw, now wrapped in a reinforced brace built from alloy bone splints. He had patched hundreds of machines over the years, but this was the first time something alive had let him near its vulnerabilities. I think you were made to be more than a weapon, he said quietly. You were built to be feared, controlled, maybe unleashed if they needed a war won or a city leveled. The dragon's eye opened slowly, golden and deep. But something in you, it didn't bend, did it? A long pause. Then, impossibly, the dragon's tail shifted slightly in the dirt. Not a threat. A twitch of acknowledgement. Lan leaned forward. They were scared of what would happen if you stopped obeying, so they tried to destroy you. The dragon didn't move, but it didn't look away. And now you're here, Lan murmured, half dead, broken, still breathing. You're not just the deadliest thing in the galaxy. You're the most free. The dragon's eye narrowed again. Lan raised his hand and pointed up at the stars beyond the shelter roof. They burned you, but you're still here. Not because you're too weak to leave, because you're still choosing. And for the first time, the dragon made a sound that wasn't pain. A low, rumbling tone, almost like a hum. Lan froze, then nodded. Yeah, he said. I hear you. He pulled out a pulse welder, twisted a coupler into place on the dragon's shoulder joint, and said, almost absently, you need a name. The dragon did not react. Not one they gave you. Not a serial number or a designation. Something real. The stars above shimmered against the sky like cold fire. I'll think of one, Lan said. And when I do, you tell me if it's right. The dragon lowered its head slowly until its jaw brushed the ground beside him. A massive, heavy silence wrapped around them. Not dangerous, restful, like fire finally sleeping. For the first time in years, Lan felt like he wasn't alone in the universe. The hunters arrive. The storm rolled in with soundless wind and no clouds. It came from orbit, a low, humming ripple that vibrated every metal panel across the outpost and made the hairs on Lan's arms rise. He knew the sound. Not from manuals or repair work, from memory. Syndicate approach craft. Silent drive. Undetectable, unless you were used to the frequency of death. Lan stood at the edge of the crater, eyes narrowing as he spotted the first glint of burn light streaking through the upper atmosphere. They had come for their dragon. Of course they had. Vesper, he said quietly. The dragon's head lifted. They had settled on the name 2 days ago. When Lan had said it aloud, the dragon had made that humming sound again, deeper this time, like approval. Vesper. Evening star. The last light before darkness. Company's coming, Lan said, not turning around. The kind that doesn't knock. Vesper rose to her feet. Lan had started thinking of the dragon as female, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe because of the way she moved now, careful and deliberate, protective of the repairs he'd made. Her wings spread slightly, testing their range of motion. The syndicate ships descended like falling knives. 3 of them, sleek and black, designed for one purpose, retrieval. They landed in a triangle formation around the crater, engines cooling with metallic ticks. Figures emerged. Combat armor, energy weapons, faces hidden behind tactical visors. But Lan recognized the walk, the bearing. Corporate soldiers. The kind who followed orders without asking questions. The lead figure approached, weapon lowered but ready. When he spoke, His voice was amplified by his helmet's comm system. Civilian. Step away from the asset. Lan didn't move. Asset. Designation, Apex, 7. Property of Helix Corporation. You are in violation of salvage laws and corporate jurisdiction. Step away. Behind Lan, Vesper growled, a sound like tectonic plates shifting. Funny thing about that, Lan said, still not moving. She's not property anymore. The soldier's helmet tilted. Explain. You threw her away. Left her to die. I found her, I fixed her, I fed her. Salvage laws work both ways, friend. Abandoned property belongs to whoever claims it. The asset is not abandoned. It is being retrieved. The asset, Lan said, his voice hardening, has a name. Vesper took a step forward, positioning herself beside Lan. Her good eye fixed on the soldiers, and for the first time since the crash, Lan saw the predator she had been built to be. The soldiers raised their weapons. Final warning, the leader said. Step away from the asset, or we will consider you hostile. Lan looked up at Vesper. The dragon looked down at him. In that golden eye, Lan saw something he'd never expected to see in a weapon of mass destruction. Trust. I've been fixing broken things my whole life, Lan said to the soldiers. But I've never seen anything as broken as people who call living beings assets. He reached into his tool belt and pulled out a small device, a signal disruptor he'd built years ago to block corporate surveillance drones. Vesper, he said quietly. Show them what free looks like. The dragon's roar shattered the night. It wasn't pain this time, or even rage. It was defiance, the sound of something that had been caged finally breaking its chains. The soldiers opened fire. But they were too late. Vesper moved like liquid lightning, her massive form flowing between Lan and the energy blasts. Her wings spread wide, casting shadows that danced like demons in the weapon fire. The real battle was about to begin. The final stand. Vesper moved like controlled chaos. Her tail swept in a wide arc, sending two soldiers flying across the crater. Her claws carved trenches in the metal plating as she pivoted, using her body as a shield between Lan and the remaining attackers. Energy blasts splashed harmlessly off her armored hide. The repairs Lan had made held strong, reinforced plating, upgraded power distribution, optimized neural pathways. She wasn't just surviving the fight, she was dominating it. But more ships were coming. Lan could see them descending through the atmosphere, their lights like angry stars. This way, he shouted, grabbing his tool pack. The maintenance tunnels. Vesper followed, her massive form somehow fitting through passages that seemed impossibly small. They moved through the bowels of Cordon 6, past abandoned workshops and forgotten storage bays, until they reached the old mining platform at the outpost's edge. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Shouts. The whine of energy weapons charging. End of the line, Lan muttered, looking out at the drop beyond the platform. Below them stretched the taxi's rift, a gravitational anomaly that had swallowed ships and dreams for decades. Vesper stepped beside him, her breathing steady despite the chase. She looked out at the void, then down at Lan. I know, he said. Not exactly an escape route. The soldiers appeared at the tunnel entrance, weapons raised. Behind them stood a figure in different armor, sleeker, more expensive. Corporate executive class. Enough, the figure said, removing her helmet to reveal a sharp-featured woman with cold eyes. My name is Director Kane, Helix Corporation. You've caused considerable damage to company property. Your property chose to stay with me, Lan replied. Assets don't choose. They obey. Kane gestured to her soldiers. Apex 7 was designed to be the ultimate weapon. Controlled fusion of biology and technology. It took 15 years and 3 billion credits to develop. And it took 5 minutes for you to throw her away when she didn't act like a puppet. It malfunctioned. refused direct neural commands, became unpredictable. Lan looked up at Vesper, who was watching the conversation with intelligent eyes. She became herself. Sentience was not part of the design parameters, Kane said coldly. We're here to correct that error. She nodded to her soldiers. They raised weapons designed not to kill, but to paralyze, to capture, to drag back to laboratories where minds could be dissected and rebuilt. Vesper stepped forward, positioning herself between Lan and the soldiers. Her growl was low, steady, not a threat, but a promise. You can't win, Kane said. We have 12 ships in orbit, 200 soldiers, neural scramblers designed specifically for your pet. Surrender now, and you'll live to spend the rest of your days in a comfortable prison cell. Lan was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. You know what I learned fixing things all these years? Sometimes the best repair is knowing when to let something go. He pulled a device from his belt, not the signal disruptor, but something else. A gravity anchor, salvaged from a deep space mining rig. Modified, rewired, turned into something no safety protocol would ever approve. Lan, Vesper made a sound, not quite a word, but close. Her first attempt at human speech. I know, he said. But sometimes freedom means choosing your own ending. He activated the device. The gravity anchor overloaded, creating a localized distortion in the space around the platform. The edge of the taxi's rift began to expand, reaching out with invisible fingers. The soldiers scrambled backward as equipment started sliding toward the growing anomaly. Kane's eyes went wide with panic. You're insane. You'll kill us all. Maybe, Lan said. Or maybe I'll give her what you never could. A choice. He looked up at Vesper. You can fly, can't you? Those wings aren't just for show. Vesper's eyes met his. In them, Lan saw understanding. And something else, gratitude. The dragon spread her wings, catching an updraft from the gravitational distortion. She rose into the air, beautiful and terrible and free. For a moment, she hovered above the platform. Then she swooped down, grabbed Lan gently in her claws, and soared upward into the night sky. Behind them, the platform collapsed into the rift, taking the soldiers' equipment with it. The syndicate ships pulled back, unable to risk the gravitational anomaly. Vesper carried Lan high above Cordon 6, past the atmosphere, into the star-filled void. In the distance, a habitable moon glowed blue-green with promise. How about that one? Lan said, pointing. Looks quiet. Good place to fix things. Vesper hummed her agreement and angled toward their new home. Below them, the corporate fleet regrouped and departed, their prize lost to freedom. They would mark Apex 7 as destroyed in their reports. It was easier than admitting they had been outwitted by a mechanic and the dragon they had tried to enslave. Years later, travelers passing through the outer rim would tell stories of a strange sight, a man and a dragon working together on a small moon, fixing broken ships for anyone who needed help. They never asked for payment, only that their guests treat all living things with kindness. Some said the dragon could speak now, in a voice like distant thunder. Others claimed the mechanic had learned the dragon's ancient language. But everyone agreed on one thing: they had never seen two beings more perfectly suited to each other. The man who fixed machines had found something that couldn't be repaired, only loved. And the dragon who had been built to destroy had discovered what it truly meant to create. Together, they built a life that no corporation could own, no army could conquer, and no force in the galaxy could take away. The end.